as a listener, we are consuming in a few seconds or minutes what the speaker would have experienced and learned over months, years, and decades. But now I am supposed to consume it and evaluate it within a matter of seconds to minutes at best. That's why I say in situations of listening, the odds are heavily stacked against us as a listener. We have no chance. So, what is the solution here? What is the mitigation here? The best mitigation is that when you are listening, just listen. Don't think. Because if you start thinking, now you're trying to do two things at the same time, and you're going to do neither job very well. So that's why what I have found works is when you are listening to somebody, just listen, just be fully present and take the information. Treat it like a gift. Get into the state of, I feel so privileged that I get to listen. Get yourself in that mindset. What I'm trying to share here is how do you become a pure listener? It is a skill that can be built. I know this because I was a terrible listener, and I can fairly confidently say that I'm now an extremely good listener. So this pure listening, as you start doing it, the tactic that is useful is try to spot the gaps between the words the speaker utters. Just try to pay attention to the gaps. That's it. So as I'm speaking right now, try to pay attention to the gaps between the words I am uttering. Because what happens is when you try to do that, when you try to look for gap, as the words are going by, you say gap, 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 right? That's all you're doing. What will happen is you can't help but get into this pure listening mode. And I will share something very surprising, or perhaps most people will find surprising, is that great listening is actually no different from meditation. This mode of looking for the gaps between the words, it's just a tactic. The way the tactic helps is it forces you to be present. It forces your mind to just focus on what is being said and focus very keenly and closely on what is being said, such that you leave no room for thought in parallel, because thought is the killer of listening. It will take some practice, but again, I assure you, it is not the hardest skill in the world to learn. What I just said is easier than many other skills we try to learn, like doing a serve in tennis very well. That is much harder than what I just told you. And if you're not a professional tennis player, what I just told you is going to profoundly change your life compared to learning how to serve well. This is not that difficult, but you have to kind of commit to it. So first you get yourself in the mindset of what a privilege, what a pleasure to get this opportunity to listen. Then pay attention to the gaps between the words. That's a tactic and a tool to turn off the thinking and just get in this pure listening mode. After that, as you do this, here's the very surprising and almost magical thing that will happen. The thoughts and the responses and the correct questions and the correct responses to what you have just heard will just come on their own. The conscious thought, it's like those pebbles in your shoe. If you have pebbles in your shoe and you're trying to play basketball, it's not going to work. It's going to always be annoying. It's going to be there. So this constant thought is like the pebbles in your shoes. But now that you've eliminated that kind of conscious, constant thought, what happens is there is actually a subconscious part of you that is actually processing what you're listening to. You don't see it, it's subconscious. You cannot spot it, but it's happening. It's happening inside of you. So that part of you now gets an outlet to respond. And that part of you is going to respond with much greater clarity of thought than what you could have done if you were thinking in parallel to listening. Now, this one, you kind of have to take the leap of faith and just trust me that this will happen, because you first have to do these other steps. But if you do these steps, what you'll find is the quality of your response is just tremendously higher. The last step here is if it is something extremely complicated where you have to think through almost like a tree of possibilities. You have to run a bunch of simulations in your head, or you kind of deep down know the answer, but you want to think about how to frame it in a way that you're clear and concise. Then ask the other person, can I take a few seconds to think before I respond? Use that thinking time to create structure around what it is that you want to say, or to do that simulation, run through that tree of possibilities, whatever it is that you need to do that is complex. But take your time and then respond, because again, the quality of your response will then be much better, instead of just having this pressure of having to respond within a second after somebody stops speaking. What I just shared with you is my recipe for that next level thinking. One should perhaps consider it for practical reasons, for sure, which is you'll be able to get your work done better, etc. But I'll tell you, it's a road to greater tranquility, happiness, and just joy in the work you're doing, in the interactions you're having, if you can get to this place. So even if you don't want to do it for practical reasons, there's actually reasons of joy for which this is absolutely worth it.